The Life of Maurice Sendak, presented by Nicole Bush. Maurice Sendak was born in June of 1928 and known as the most honored children's book artist in history. However, he didn't start off feeling this way. He was born in Brooklyn, New York on June 10, 1928. His heritage was Jewish-Polish, and at that time it was the Holocaust. His mother and father, Sadie and Philip Sendak, were dressmakers. And yet, even though they did their best to protect young Maurice, he still felt the loss and terror of the Holocaust, as he lost many relatives due to this sad time in history. He was the youngest of 3 children. His older siblings were Natalie and Jack. And although the Holocaust was to blame for his isolation at times, it also didn't help that his health wasn't the greatest growing up. But it was through this isolation that his imagination grew. For the only world he knew was what he saw outside of his window. And when he saw the Disney movie Fantasia, he knew he would be an illustrator. He went to high school at the International High School at Lafayette. He soon followed in the Art Students League of New York. His famous career was a big part of his life, and yet he had another thriving career that not many people know about. For in the late 1970s, he began working on the stage as a costume and stage designer. Pictured at your right is him in one of his famous plays with the costume props that he made, that he designed. Those were in the play after his famous book, Where the Wild Things Are. He also did notable works in operas, such as Mozart's The Magic Flute and Tchaikovsky's ballet, The Nutcracker, and those are just to name a few. A few of his notable books, of course, his most famous, Where the Wild Things Are, brings us into the mind of a rowdy little boy who was a little too rowdy one night and sent to his room without supper. And yet in this room, his rowdy imagination grew. Vines fell from the ceiling and trees emerged from the walls, and soon he found himself on a boat, drifting along many, many years through seas, until he came to an island where many wild things are, fierce wild things. And yet, his fierceness established him as the king of wild things. But once night came, and the wild things were asleep, he found himself lonely, until an aroma caught his attention, and he drifted back over many seas, back, as that world faded. He found himself back in his bedroom, and lo and behold, his supper still hot. This masterpiece was awarded in 1964 the Caldecott Medal. Onto the world of fantasy, Maurice wrote and illustrated Outside Over There, where a girl whom took the responsibility of watching over her beloved baby sister, as her father was at sea and her mother at the arbor. And yet, as she blew her horn, goblins came and captured her sister. And so she armored up with her horn and went in search for her precious baby sister, whom she found in the possession of the goblins in the middle of a wedding ceremony. And it was then she began to play her horn over and over again, many different tunes, and the goblins couldn't help but dance. They danced and danced until they danced into streams, and she took her baby sister back in sweet relief. She journeyed back home where her mother awaited, and her mother read her a letter from her papa, saying to take care and watch over for till he got back home. It was awarded in 1982 the Caldecott Medal and the National Book Award for Children's Books. And finally, a jolly little book about a boy and his love for chicken soup with rice. He goes through the year, month by month, describing how and what he would do with his chicken soup with rice, in every way he would consume it. Looking throughout Maurice's life, his impressive lists of medals and honors are just a portion of his amazingly talented life. In 1964, he was awarded the Caldecott Medal for the book Where the Wild Things Are. In 1970, he was honored with the Hans Christian Andersen Award for Children's Books Illustration. In 1982, the National Book Award in the category of picture books for his work Outside Over There. Following that, in 1983, Laura Ingalls Wilder Medal for American Children's Literature. A little while afterwards, in 1996, the National Medal of Arts. In 2003, the Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award for Children's Literature. He also received multiple honorary doctorates, one from Princeton University in 1984, another from University of Connecticut in 1990, and finally one from Goucher College in 2004. In 2003, Sendak was inducted into the New York Writers Hall of Fame. He also received a huge honor of having 2 elementary schools named after him, One is located in North Hollywood, California, and the other in his home city of Brooklyn, New York, at PS 118. Maurice Sendak is a good example of how, even when we go through dark times in our life, especially in our childhood, we can turn it into a doorway of opportunity. Although his health was poor and he was secluded and in fear because of the loss of his family members during the Holocaust, he used it to bloom his imagination, where vines fell from the roof and trees blossomed from the walls, and the wild things in his imagination soon came to life on paper and left a legacy in his life. Thank you.